Jonathan Green, hello. Welcome to Starburst. How are you, sir?
Hello, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Yes, I'm well, thanks. How are you?
So you always seem to have some sort of exciting adventure game related Kickstarter. So tell us about your new
Yes.
thing.
So the new one is called HEOROT, as in King Hrothgar's Hall from Beowulf. And it's an RPG version, effectively, of my game book, Beowulf Beastslayer. So having written, well, I'm currently finishing off the 6th adventure game book in that series, the Ace game book series, but I've started turning them into RPGs as well. So as well as playing them solo, you can now play them with friends. But rather than just rehashing the book, it obviously expands the world and brings in all sorts of other elements of mythology and folklore.
So if I've seen the Beowulf, say I've heard the poem or I've seen the movie more likely,
Yeah.
but I've not played the
Yes.
game, what should I expect?
So in the game book, you are Beowulf and you travel to Denmark from southern Sweden to get rid of the monster Grendel. And then, of course, in doing so, you earn the ire of his mother. And from then on, if you make it to the end of the book, you become king and have to fight a dragon. So that follows the plot of the poem completely. But then within that, obviously, I've added branching elements. And one of the things which is new to it is that throughout the adventure, you get to tell a story. And depending on, so when you tell the story, it then effectively goes back in time and you act out that story. And if you succeed in that mini quest, you then gain bonus hero points, which help you in the adventure. So, for example, if you're trying to perform some heroic feat, which would be beyond the means of mortal man, you can spend hero points to succeed rather than having to roll dice to see if you manage or not. So the idea is that by telling heroic stories, you're effectively proving that's why you're a hero. And that is the element I've really gone with in the role-playing game. So no matter, there's about 3 different ways to play it, but no matter how you do it, there's always a storytelling element. So the concept is that you travel to King Hrothgar's Mead Hall of HEOROT and you take part in storytelling contests. And this either then forms the basis of the game which the players go on, or it earns you hero points to then undertake a different quest and you can spend those points, except they're now called weird points. It affects your pool of weird points, as in fate from Norse mythology.
So what kind of characters can you play in the Beowulf role-playing game? Because apart from just, Beowulf.
So obviously, yes, I mean, they're generally heroic types, but you can have characters like berserkers, shield maidens, thanes. The idea is that the games master becomes the skald or the poet who is reciting this epic tale and you're acting it out. But if you want to, the players can all be a hero, and then depending on whose story is being played out, the other players then take turns to be their war host and fulfill different roles, like Isman on the boat, or a messenger, or an archer, all these different abilities. The one thing which the basic game doesn't have is magic, because I've looked at magic within the Norse myths, and obviously runes are a huge part of that side of things, and there are people who use Viking runes to predict the future, and that is how magic will work in the game as well. So rather than casting spells in here and now, you try to either find out what the future is going to be or influence it in some way, but that also brings a price that you'll have to pay somewhere down the line. So other creatures like sorceresses and sometimes trolls and things like that, they have magical powers, so they can cast spells as we would know them. But for humans to do that, it's all about influencing the future.
So is that a in-game mechanic, or is that an in-play mechanic? Is it a case of I do a thing and then I have bonus dice to roll later, or is it more a case of I do a thing and I have a clue?
So the idea is, in the game, if you want to use the power of the runes like that, you have to find someone who is capable of using the runes. So you find a soothsayer or someone like that. So that could become a quest in itself. Then within the game, you roll dice to represent the rune stones, and depending on the outcome of that, you may get an instant boost in the game which would raise some stats. You may get something which will get you out of a tricky situation in the future. But like I say, there's also always some price to pay. So maybe there's a blood debt owed, or you'll find that at some vital point in your adventure, you have to sacrifice something, but all to keep the fates happy. So yes, it would be, I guess you could say it's both in-game and a mechanic.
So you've said this is the first of the role-playing games based on your adventure game books. Does that mean that we're going to get an Alice in Wonderland game at some point?
It's actually the second. The first one came out in time for Christmas. So
Okay.
it was maybe slightly a strange choice, but it was the most recent game book when I turned it into the RPG. I'd wanted to do the Beowulf one when I actually launched the Kickstarter for the game book, but I did think I was possibly making a rod for my own back. So I kept it on the back burner, and I'm glad I did. Alice, I'm not sure. I've thought about it, but what I'd really like to do for Alice is a board game. I think that would work very well. But I also want to use some other properties in similar ways. So I'd like to develop some sort of role-playing aspect beyond just a role-playing game book for all of the properties. For example, Neverland, Here Be Monsters, which is Peter Pan versus pirates versus dinosaurs versus the world. I'm considering doing that for an existing game system, doing it under license, and getting someone to help me out on the game side while I create the background for the world.
So tabletop role-playing games seem to be a huge thing now. Why is that? Why do you think there's suddenly been a massive rise in tabletop role-playing games?
Well, I think for people like you and I, they've always been a big thing, but I know what you mean. I think part of it is just like with geek culture in general, it's becoming more and more mainstream, and we see it represented in film. I don't know if that's because people of a certain age like us, when we played it when we were teenagers and children, we're now the ones with the possibly a bit more influence in getting to make them in the real world, should we say. But just that general feed through from everything like superhero movies, it's then, I think it's just brought a general awareness. Places like Forbidden Planet, you know, you go there because you want to get your Funko Pop of Captain Marvel, and then you see the D&D section, you see the Call of Cthulhu stuff, you see collectible card games like Magic and all the rest. So I think that's part of it. I mean, obviously things like Stranger Things, having the kids playing Dungeons and Dragons won't have done any harm. And then I think also just the weird world we're living in at the moment, it's, although people would like to normally meet up in person and do this, equally you can now have role-playing game sessions with friends meeting up all over the world, like never before.
It is much easier to turn on Zoom and meet all your friends at once.
Yeah, and people have the time to do it because they're not commuting, or they're not going out to the pub, or they're not going to their sports clubs like they would have been before. And then having tried it, they think, actually, this is fun, and they keep going.
So what else, if I back the Kickstarter for HEOROT,
yes,
what is the advantages of backing the Kickstarter rather than just waiting for it to come out and picking it up at, say, UK Games Expo?
Yeah, well, it will be published. I will have physical copies at events, but it'll also be published through Drive-Thru RPG, and it'll be fulfilled through that website as well. The main benefit is, of course, if we get enough backers to unlock enough stretch goals, you will get all of the unlocked stuff. So if you back at the Beast Slayer reward level or above, so £40 or above, any unlocked rewards you will get chucked into your basket without paying any extra money. So obviously raising the right amount of money means I can afford to have those supplements and other books, adventures produced and illustrated and laid out and proofread, you know, to a professional standard, as I did with Twas. But so you're getting it all, an all-in-one price. You can then choose if you just want to have PDFs on your iPad, or if you want to buy physical copies, and whether you then want to buy soft cover or hardcover. But you only pay the printing cost and any postage on top, so you're not having to buy the game again. You've effectively paid for the content, and what you're then paying for is just the physical format of that, if that's the way you want to go. I do have some other rewards as well. So, so for example, the Troll Slayer reward, which is £60. With that, you also get a deck of playing cards, which are linked to the game. Now you can, one of the things about my games, it started the game books, is you can use dice, but also playing cards. So the role-playing games combine both. And you use the cards to help generate random adventures, so your own heroic sagas. And you can use an ordinary pack of playing cards for that. But equally, if you get the deck that comes with the game, it's obviously all themed, and there's other elements on those cards which wouldn't be on a normal pack of playing cards. And you can also get Grendel's mother as a miniature. So some of the people who backed the original Beowulf Beastslayer Kickstarter ended up with little miniatures we've got here of Ed and Beowulf.
Cool.
So they were because we had Beowulf first, and then a stretch goal meant we could get Grendel, and Grendel's mother's being made for this. So if you back at £60, you get a Grendel's mother miniature, which you'll obviously can then make up and paint yourself. And we've got Beowulf and Grendel as an add-on reward. So if you haven't got them already, you can buy those and have those 3 for your games. Obviously, there's lots of companies that produce miniatures which are suitable. It's Otherworld Miniatures who are making these, and they have their own other sort of Norse figures you can use for your games if you want to represent them in 3D on the tabletop.
Otherworld do some amazing stuff, actually. I was looking at the various dioramas recently, and I was like, ooh, very shiny. So is the plan for this, it's kind of, you're going to produce everything for HEOROT, and that's it. That'll be that squared off, and then I can go in, I can get all that stuff, and then I don't have to worry about 18 months later there being an additional supplement or me missing something. It's all kind of like, it's done, and then you're going to move on to another.
Well, my hope is, so if HEOROT hits all its stretch goals, you'll get the basic rule book, which will also have 2 adventures in. My intention is that the first one will be effectively a retelling of Beowulf hunting or fighting Grendel, and use that as almost like a quick start rules section of the book. Then later on, there's the Troll Slayer adventure, where you go up against his mother, which should be more like a traditional adventure with different outside locations and a dungeon crawl at the end. And although in the poem it's Beowulf who goes up alone against Grendel's mother, my plan is that there's another side track for those people who aren't involved in actually hunting the mother, and the 2 will interlink. So what your war host will do whilst you're battling Grendel's mother will give you benefits if they do the right thing, and equally things that you achieve within the cave network fighting her will help the other side. So it'll kind of be 2 storylines running in parallel, which for the games master to look after, which would be interesting, but I think it'd be fun. Then I want to do the Reading the Runes magic supplement, and one of the things I feel quite strongly about is when game content comes out, particularly if it's rather than just a free download, there should always be some new gaming element, so not just the rules. So there'll be a completely unique adventure which you can play using the same rule set called the Riddle. And there'll also be rules about including soothsayers and people like that in your game. Then I also want to do, ideally, there's going to be Gaats, get it right, that's the Storm Warriors. So that's Beowulf's tribe. I want to do a source book for them, which will bring in new characters, some new rules, some new treasure tables. And we'll also have the 3rd part of the Beowulf story where he fights the Dragon Slayer. And if we get far enough, I want to write a completely new campaign, nothing to do with Beowulf, but called The Sons of Ragnar, which is a kind of fictionalized version of the attack on East Anglia by Ragnar Lodbrok's children.
And this will be your 15th Kickstarter, is that right?
It is, yes.
So a fairly proven track record there.
Yes, I like to think so.
So cool. And when does it run till?
It goes until the end of March. So it's a slow burn, but I'm hoping we'll pick up plenty of backers so that we can hit those stretch goals.
I think at the time we recorded this, it was very close to hitting its quite low goal, quite modest goal. And having backed your Kickstarters before, they are just very reliable. You always get
Thank you very much. Yeah, part of it with the stretch goals I'm excited about is normally I get one artist on board because I have a very particular vision for the book. And Russ Nicholson, who illustrated the Warlock of Fartop Mountain, he also drew the Demogorgon for the Stranger Things edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and he's done Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, Fabled Lands, all sorts of things. He's going to come back on and do some portraits for high-level backers. but I've also got John Howe, as in John Howe, who worked on the Lord of the Rings films of Peter Jackson and designed the look of them with Alan Lee. He's also providing some brand new illustrations for the book, which is quite amazing. And then I've got Katie Wakelin, who's doing some cool sort of woodcut style fillet images and banner headers and mythological pictures. I've got a guy called Ryan McGee's doing the maps. He's actually done a map already of the area of Northern Europe, which we're calling Midgard for the game. Kind of the period it sort of covers is the end of Roman rule in Britain and Europe through to about Norman conquest. So there's all sorts of stories you can tell within that period. And there's also a guy who goes by the name of LA Draws, and he's on ArtStation and Twitter, and he's based in Lagos, Nigeria, and he's done the cover art for me. And also I want him to do the covers for the other books and supplements if we get that far. And I'm trying to think, oh yes, and Kev Crossley, who illustrated my first few Ace game books, is doing a brand new drawing of Yggdrasil, the world tree, which I think will look fantastic in his very detailed interwoven style.
Very familiar with Kev's work, and it is quite gorgeous. Jonathan Green, it's been a pleasure as always. And
thank you.
Yeah, if you've come to the end of this video, two things. Firstly, please like and subscribe. And secondly, go and back the Kickstarter.
Thank you very much.